Hey, this is Beverly Bozeman, and welcome to another episode of About Her Ministry. And today I have with me the very special First Lady, Nakia Wright. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate you stopping by.
It is an honor to be with you all today. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am, you are so very welcome. And I would like to start the first question off as following. What is your role as a First Lady?
Oh, how much time do you have?
We have enough time for you to answer.
Well, thank you. My role, I wear many hats. Um, I am the COO of our church here at the Gathering at Forestville, led by the wonderful, the awesome, the incredible Bishop Wright. I'm honored to have his last name and to be his wife and his companion and his helpmate. So first and foremost, I'm the COO and for the church. But more importantly, as a first lady, I believe that I am my husband's safe haven. I am his balance between ministry and earth. And I believe that um, it's it's very different if you're married. And I hope I'm not going to another question. So it's very different from being married to a man who's a lawyer or a doctor, as opposed to being married to a man that is the pastor. And you know that his role and souls are attached to his walk. So it's so different being married to them. And our role is very different. You have to be their peace. You have to be their sanity. You have to be their wisdom. You have to be there when nobody else can tell them, like, hold up now, pause for a second. So I should have said that first. My first role is a wife to my husband, and after my role as a wife, I'm the COO of our organization. I have my own organization, which is a Woman's Voice Matters. As you know, as a first lady, our role is, and I don't even use the term first lady. I don't even use it. I won't say why, because many people are offended by it, but I don't. I'm little old Nakia. I just feel like titles complicate life. So I just keep it so basic and so simple. And with that comes the reverence and the respect that many people fight for. But when you realize that the titles get in the way of love, I don't even use them. So I hope I answered your question.
You did. You
Yeah.
did. Definitely. Thank you. I really like the part where you said that to your husband, you are his peace. You are I even jotted it down, his wisdom and his sanity. And the thing about it is, I think that once we get married, we already have everything lined up in our minds. We're going to do this. We're going to take pictures. We're going to go on trips. We're going to have all this fun. But being a man's peace and being his sanity and being his wisdom, that's work.
That's work.
That's work. That's just another hat that we had no idea the type of peace we had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to maintain our own peace to help them have their peace. So you have multiple hats in that alone. So thank you for sharing that part. And I think that kind of answers some questions that the single women might have, because they have no idea what's all involved in being the peace to a husband. They have no idea. So
I have no idea. And for me, I didn't get married till I was 38. So I achieved so much when I was single. See, most people, when they get into marriage, they're looking for their own identity. And you have to realize that when you get married, there's no my own identity. From the day you say I do, marriage is your mission, and it's a we agenda. So what you have to realize is achieve all that you can while you're single. Because when you are single, there's no more I. It's now we in everything that you do. And it's not a bad thing. Like finding your purpose in marriage. Marriage, my husband is my best friend. Wife is a great title, but I work every day to be his friend. And the one thing that I had to learn is, God, what did you intend for us to do together? Because God makes no mistakes. So if there's a connection, there is a we agenda. And finding that we agenda has been my sole purpose in marriage. And what it may be for this season, it may not be the same for the next season. Because as you know, our husbands don't stay the same. And if we stay the same while they're growing, that's when you become unequally yoked. So you have to be in tune, and details matter in love. You have to be detail oriented in your love so you all grow together.
That is so true. That is so very true. I love that. Um, so my next question is, how do you balance the hats, the title that comes along with being a first lady?
Okay, so I fail epically at that at times. Now, there's some days where I'm killing it. Then there's other days where I fail epically. I thank God for the grace that He gives my household to manage the moments of failure. So I'll give you an example. So typically, what I do is at a certain time. So my husband is my husband, my friend, my boss, and my pastor. So you have to find a balance in all of that. So from 9 to 5, we working. And since it's the pandemic, I'm in the house when I'm not at church. So we're all business, but I have to cut it off at like 5 o'clock. Like, babe, we're not talking about that. And since we are in the home, and I am the praise and worship leader, finding the music, I'm his cameraman, I'm his EP. Like it has been difficult to find balance, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So I fail epically because I oversee all the administrative parts of the church. My husband basically preaches. And there are times where, and I try my hardest to make sure. I come from corporate America. I used to work on Capitol Hill. I work on campaigns. I run campaigns. So in my own right, I'm a boss, quote unquote. So in this area of life, I'm used to making all of the decisions, and I come and I'm over here, and I have to make sure that I ask my husband, this is what we're doing. What are your thoughts about it? I'm presenting this proposal to you. The worship team wants to do this. The women's ministry wants to do this. And there are times when I make the decisions for my husband, right? Not intentional. And one day he got me all together because, so my husband and I have been married for 7 years this past September. And in those 7 years, I can count on one hand how many times we've argued. My husband's not an arguer. We're talkers. We're communicators. If our emotions are high, because in my previous life, my tongue was my weapon. So when I get upset, I shut down. I'm like, babe, I'm pausing it today. We'll revisit this because my words will sting, and I never want to wound my husband. So we were having one of our disagreements, and I was like, look, I'm tired. I am exhausted. I feel like I'm doing this. I feel like I'm just one moment away from losing my mind. And my husband said, because you're doing what you wasn't graced to do. You're making the decisions that I'm supposed to be making. I was graced to do that. Not God didn't give the grace to you. You're carrying my load on your shoulders, and you're not supposed to. He got me all the way together. But listen, after that conversation, I felt a weight that I didn't know I was carrying. And I went back to submitting everything through him because the pressure of making decisions I didn't realize was so much. And I'm not graced to do it. He is. So finding balance is a daily task. You may not succeed every day, but make sure that there's some cutoff points so that church does not spill into the bedroom, or church does not spill into the dining room, because I love my husband, but there's times where I can't stand my boss. And you have to find the balance in it. And God graced me I can't hold a grudge if somebody paid me. He graced me to do that. So it's easy for me to turn off the agitation of my husband and my boss and go to the softness and the love of my husband. But it takes intentional behavior. It takes work to turn off your mind. But it's not impossible. You literally have to yield your mind and command it to stop so that you can begin the wife mode. And we are, I have a 3-year-old, AKA boss baby, around the house. And I'm still learning how to navigate, it's time for her to shut down. because she runs the house. Like, we're grandparents. You have grace on grandparents that you didn't have with your own kids. I wish the grandkids came first. But anyway, I'm rambling. It's and to sum it up, it takes intention. You won't always, what worked yesterday for balance may not work today, but being intentional about your behavior creates patterns that will make sure that your life doesn't feel overwhelming.
I love that. Being intentional. So one of the things you said was that you were not graced to do those things that your husband was graced to do. What do you think that you're graced to do aside from with dealing with the grandkids?
I am graced. So my gift is administration. So I am graced to two deals. I can sit at a table with the CEO. So we're in the middle of a building project. I'm the one that's sitting at the table with the bankers and the lawyers and the attorneys, because that's what my field is. I'm graced to do the business part of it. But when it comes down to church, when it comes down to people needing help, or we want to do a program and I'm overseeing a program, there are some things that I say yes to that Bishop may not have said yes to. Mm-hmm. And that adds a weight to it. So when it comes to the business portion of it, I can do it. But when it comes to the decisions of mentoring people versus counseling, because there's a thin line between that, there are some things that an elder should do and not necessarily the wife should do. There are some things that, so for me, I've always been a workaholic. Again, I got married when I was 38 years old. I was the head of the household, 2 kids, single. I never wanted to struggle, so I was a workaholic. So when you ask me to do something or you come up with this idea, I'm all for it. Let's do it. And I'm the type of person where if you're working, I'm working just as hard as you, because when people see you work, they like, oh, my lady Wright is a worker. And my husband said, you have to learn that just because you say yes to something, that you don't always have to be so hands-on. So I was graced to do the administrative portion of it. To handle the attorneys, to handle the engineers, to handle the state of Maryland and the Army Corps of Engineers. But there are some things with church that use who God placed in your ministry to help you. Use your front line, use the young people that's coming in to help you, because we're all a village. And I've learned that when you have people in your ministry that's busy and working, they feel more attached to the vision.
That makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense. But let them be hands-on so that they can see the fruit of their labor. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. So my next question is, what have you found to be a challenge or the greatest challenge as it pertains to being married to a pastor?
Okay. So I had a radio show that I did every week. And it was called The Lady Nakia Wright Show. And I had hundreds and thousands of viewers on my radio show. And I wasn't raised in church, but I love God. I am a worshiper. And sometimes I say the wrong thing. And it's the sincerity of my heart, and I mean it. And I will come home, and my husband said, I can't believe my wife just said that. So it is finding the balance to always make sure that you are like you are, just because you feel it does not mean that you should say it. Right. And I found that to be the hardest. So when I first got married to my husband, we joined an organization, and the organization, shout out to Bishop Neil C. Ellis, Global United Fellowship. And I joined a phenomenal lady, Patrice Ellis, and she headed up the ladies of that fellowship. So I joined her. She asked me to be on her team, so her and I were over the first ladies. And I did not I didn't grow up in church. So I didn't understand the stuffiness of first ladies. Like, I didn't understand it. Like, you offended me. Like, why are you like this? Like, come on. And I understood over a time that wives who've been in ministry for a while had wounds that were never addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, rather than addressing the wounds, they held them on the inside. And as a result of this, they became, I don't want to use the word bitter, but their exterior was a little hard. And again, me, I don't hold grudges. And I went in there with this bubbly personality, and they looking at me like I'm so crazy and like, sit down somewhere. And it took me a while to understand that they were wounded in their walk, and finding the balance of not becoming what I see, what I saw, and then helping other women to, if you have decided to remain in your marriage, don't be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. Let's try everything we can to make life happy again. Because one of the things that I refuse to be is unhappy in my life. Like, I don't ever want to live a miserable life. I've lived it before, and I vow never, ever to live it again. So one of the things that my hardest thing was making sure I said the right thing, and not embarrass my husband. And another thing was realizing that, so I didn't always have the grace that we got out of church and my husband prayed and preached up a storm. Like, yeah, we running around the building, we falling out, we got tears everywhere. And then on Monday you calling and you asking for prayer. What? Why? Were you not in service yesterday? Well, he preached about the exact thing that you just asked for prayer about. And my husband has this remarkable grace that I haven't been given. And I hope that God graced me with it, because I was like, no, why they calling asking for prayer? They was at the altar yesterday. So I've had to learn the balance of, and the patience of love, because his grace is a lot better than mine. I'm still learning. I'm a work in progress. I tell everybody I'm still under construction.
Right.
So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. And I'm glad that you said that you're a work in progress, because I think that we, especially in the church world, have first ladies all figured out. We have the cookie cutter ready, and this is how you are supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to sit, present each other, and present yourselves to each other, and this is how you are to sacrifice. And if you don't, something's wrong with you. So I'm glad that you shared that, because in real life, we are all a work in progress. So first ladies should be given the same respect as well, to be under progress.
Absolutely. And look, there's no such thing as perfection. We don't have life all figured out. That's why I don't use the title first lady. It comes with the expectation that you can't live up to.
Mm-hmm.
So you expect me to be what you can't. And the Bible does say likewise, if you expect me to live a certain way, to talk a certain way, to dress a certain way, I expect you to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I take the title off so you won't put expectations on me that I refuse to live up to. I'm not. And my church is so phenomenal. Oh my gosh, they're so amazing. They let me be me. Awesome. There's two things of me. You're either gonna love me or you're not. But I won't live in a place called perspective. Mm-hmm. I won't live in a place called fake, because right now our churches are not as crowded as they once was, because people can spot a fraud from a mile away. Mm-hmm. There are days when I had to learn to live with, this is part of what I should have said, my husband preaching about our relationship in the pulpit. I mean, he literally talking about something that we are going through or went through. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I am going to punch him in his throat. Oh, I'm going to get him for this. Like, I'm literally like, oh, it's going to be on. And it took me a while to realize. I was like, sir, why would you do that? And he said, Nakia, we are the front line. People relate to life through our eyes. Mm-hmm. Our difficult moments are somebody else's answers. And I'm like, dude, can you give me a warning? Like, really? Because I'm sitting there trying to keep the unified front, and on the inside, I'm like, oh, I'm going to punch this Bama in his throat. I'm sorry. Forgive me. But that is really what I'm thinking while he preaching on a serious issue in our household. And it took me a while to realize that I'm an answer. And there are some very uncomfortable moments that come along with being an answer. He almost got it a few times, Lady Bossman. Pray for me.
Well said. Well said. I think you're being candid about that. It really gives us regular people hope. I know you're just ready to let him have it, but like you said, being on the front line, you're the answer to what a lot of people are wondering and going through. So that's awesome. Hopefully, you won't hurt him too badly.
Listen, I didn't. Listen, God is his friend. By the time we got from the altar to the altar, he probably made sure he did say something that drew me to the altar, because by the time I got finished at the altar, all was well. I recovered. But the moment, woo, Lord.
You could have gotten him behind the closed doors. It would have been something terrible.
Let me tell you something. And you know that it's going to be serious when he leave with, I don't even think my wife know this. I'm like, oh. All right. Brace me, Jesus. Brace me.
Wow. I tell you what, that disclaimer right there, that disclaimer is, it's a doozy, but you survived. So
I survived. I'm living proof.
Okay, good. So my next question is, how have people reacted to you being the first lady?
So, as I said, I have a wonderful, wonderful church. Oh my gosh, they are amazing. When my husband and I first got married, I was nervous about him announcing it to the church. I was really nervous about it. But when I tell you, you're always going to have your handful of people. But when I tell you that God has surrounded me and our ministry with a group of people that will fight for me anywhere, I couldn't be more blessed. I'm not one of those people that hate going to church. Like, I love my church, and I have some awesome women. I head up our women's ministry. They're so supportive of everything I do. Like I said, I have my own organization called The Woman's Voice Matters. And my church supports me. They stand with me. They check in on me. I think my husband get a little jealous. He's like, they treat you better than they treat me. And like, just for example, my birthday is actually on November the 19th. So starting on November the 1st, I've gotten a video and a gift every day from the women in my church. Every single day when I wake up to a video. And later in the day, there's a delivery of a gift. Like, I sent out a message and I said, what did I do to deserve this type of love? Like, they are amazing. But before, I think one of the things that helped with the transition is I've always been me. Mm-hmm. From the time prior to Bishop and I getting married to now, I have not changed ever. Like, I'll sit in the back of the church. I'll sit in the corner. I don't have to be on the front row. I've always been Nakia. My husband taught a lesson before we were even married. He always taught a lesson called, don't fight for what's already yours. Mm. And I'm comfortable in being his wife. I'm comfortable in being Nakia. And I just love my congregation, and in return, they love me back. Yes. But you will always have some. You
Mhm.
will. And what my husband told me was, he said, he brought balance to me. He said, because there were a few people, so we have over 500 in our congregation. And I believe when we announced that we were married, maybe 3 people left. And those 3 people, like, oh my God. I mean, I cried. Like, I was devastated. And my husband brought balance to me. He said, Nakia, you have more people cheering you on than you don't.
Mhm.
And oftentimes we focus so much on the people we left
Mhm.
that leave us, that we forget about the people that remain and love us.
Mhm. That's awesome. You are really blessed in that aspect. I know a few first ladies, and not all can attest to that. Even with them being married and then their husbands becoming pastors, they have had such oppositions from the members, females.
Heard I've heard horror stories.
Mhm.
Now, there are some people in your congregation that keep their distance because they thought they were going to be the one. Because my husband was single for 16 years before he got married, so
Wow.
they thought that that they were the one. And I honor your distance. You know,
Mhm.
I honor your distance. It's just fine. But I still love the fool out of him. Like, I'm gonna still love you regardless. I will go up behind you and hug you from the back, knowing that you don't want my hug, but you're gonna get this love. You gonna get it if you want it or not. And they probably go home and be like, I don't care. I gave it to you anyway.
Had to take an extra shower
Yeah,
to
gave it to
get
you
your
anyway.
love off, to try and get your love off of.
Yes, it ain't gonna work.
So, have you shared the story of how you were chosen as the first lady? Have you like mentioned it, like maybe in women's fellowship or in a book or anything like that?
So I'm still trying to figure it out, because to this day he has never asked to marry me, ever. So never. He's never asked to marry me. So of course, prior to us getting married, we would go out to dinner. We would have great conversations. Um, I was working in the church at that time. I was clear. I never wanted to be anybody's wife. I come from a long history on both sides of my family of unhappy marriages. I was like, oh, y'all can have that. I don't want to be anybody's wife. I'm not doing that. I'm good in my lane. And we would go out to dinner. We have great conversations. Um, and then one day, he started talking about the future. He never said him and I in the future. He just started talking about future plans. And I was like, oh, that's so good. Yes, that's amazing. Again, hey, I'm comfortable in my lane right here. And one day I was planning him a 50th birthday party. No, a little while before that, he mentioned for the very first time about making me his wife. And I was stunned. Like, it was in a conversation that we've never had. And I was stunned. And so I was planning a birthday party for him. I had all the pastors coming in, and some of his friends. And he found out about it. And just before that took place, I missed a step. I'm sorry. I've never told the story before, so I need to remember it in its order. So a month before that, he talked about us getting married, and we went and got a marriage license. I'm sorry, I missed that whole part right there. So he invited me out to lunch. And we have this place that we like to have lunch. We really love to support small businesses. So we were going down by a courthouse in our town. It's this really nice restaurant there, and we walked in and it was crowded. He was like, "Oh, it's crowded. Let's take a walk." So we took a walk, and I was like, "Do you know where he going?" And we walked to the building to get a marriage license. I was like, "What's happening here?" Like, no other conversation about it. And we got the marriage license, and he was like, how much is it? And they told him that it was $70. He went in his pocket to the T. All he had in his pocket was $70. No more ones, no more change, no anything. And got the marriage license, and I'm like in state of shock, like, what's happening? He's like, oh, it expires in 6 months. So we got 6 months to get married. I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, do you want to marry me? I'm like, and candidly speaking, I have 2 kids. And, before this, he's preaching all around the world and all these platforms. And I was like, you want to be attached to my history? And he said, if I'm not man enough to protect you from your history, he said, you're not what you used to be. And he said, if I'm not man enough to handle that, then I don't need to make you my wife. And it was amazing. So again, I was planning a birthday party for him, and he found out about it. And so prior to, he was like, I need to go over one of the pastor's houses. He wants us to pick up something. I was thinking, this man's supposed to be at the surprise birthday party that I'm having for you. Why are we going to his house? And when I got there, he pulled out a ring that he had designed, and he said, it's time. I was like, a ball of tears. And we got married. He never asked. He just did it. I always tease him about that too. He married me, and he married me on his birthday.
Oh, that is so cute.
He said things should start and begin and end on the day you were born. So he married me on his birthday.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yes.
So unique. I love that.
He got me. I didn't ever think I'd be anybody's wife, but he got me. He broke it down. The best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh, that is so cute. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay.
Yeah, the best.
I love it. I really do. So let me ask you this next question. If you could choose one person from the Bible to ask a question, who would it be, and what question would you ask?
I would ask Naomi, how did you find the grace through your pain to nurture Ruth to where she was, to get to where she was taken to? Ruth had lost her husband and all of her kids, and yet she still had the grace and the capacity in her heart to someone who is married to one of her sons to say, where you go, I go. And she graced her and she groomed her for her Boaz. I would want to know, because there's so many matriarchs who are wounded that hold the answers that I need, that I'm fighting for, when they can just release it. And I always, in all of my platforms, I always say, with the matriarchs, please rise up, because the grave has too many answers. So I would want to know what she possessed so that I can share it, so that I don't have to fight for what I know that somebody else holds the answer to.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm jotting as you speak.
Amen. Amen.
Awesome. I love that. We never really, I think, take the time to honor those who are, as you say, matriarchs, who know things that we don't know.
Yes.
And I think that we should take the time for those who would like to share. Some people, they want to keep it buried because the pain is just too deep. Mm-hmm. And we have to be respectful of that. But if we could just get just a tenth of what they have, knowledge-wise and experience, I think that would help us to reach back and pull someone else along a little further behind us. So that's awesome.
Yes.
I never really considered Naomi in that way, but that's dynamite. She had to have been a superior woman in strength. You know, to lose everybody that you held dear, and then to be able to nurture somebody else to be a part of history.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Listen, it's amazing. And just to even have the courage to go back to what her husband left. Like, that there's some shame attached to the fact that I left. And now I left with all of this in my family, and I'm coming back and it's just me. So to endure the pain, to endure the shame, and still have the capacity to sow, like, amazing. Amazing.
Yes, it is dynamite. It really is. So as we wrap it up, I would like to ask one final question. I have a couple more. Just trying to choose the best one. What is the best advice that you have received as First Lady? Well, not necessarily as First Lady, but since you've been married and taken on your new responsibilities, what's the best advice you've received?
So I hope I don't cry, Lord. So it actually came just a few months ago. And I was on social media, and I follow Will Smith's ex-wife, Cherie. I forget her last name. I'm sorry. I think she still goes by Smith or Fletcher, one of the two. And she said, "When do you forgive?" And her response was, "Why you're still hurting." Oh my God. When do you forgive? Why you're still hurting? And I reached out to her. I sent her, I cried for days. I cried for days. I did. I cried for days. And I reached out to her on social media, and I said, I need to sow into your life. And then her and I started having a dialogue. And she said, just promise me you won't ever regret the people that God sent to love you. Wow. And that has been the greatest advice in this season of my life, to heal old wounds. When do you forgive? Why you're still hurting?
That's dynamite.
Listen, it took me all the way out. I cried for days. It took me all the way out. Woo!
Imagine the strength that would come from that.
Listen, that was my biggest journey, from pain to healing. Mm-hmm. My biggest journey is inside of me. And, we all oftentimes talk about the enemy. Mm-hmm. My biggest enemy is my inner me, my thoughts, my emotions. The enemy is already defeated. Like, I can cast you out. I can tell you, I have power to tell you to go, and you go. But the one thing that I cannot gain power over is my mind and my emotions and the journey, the self-induced journey I take myself on.
This is
a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show, First Lady.
It really is. I was talking to my husband about that about an hour ago. It's just amazing. And he had to put on his minister's hat. He's like, if you could just get control of your emotions and stop leaving the window open for the enemy to come in, you wouldn't suffer so many attacks to where you just want to do this and do that. I just cannot stand when you make so much sense.
Yes. So imagine when your husband is not only a pastor, but he's also a psychologist.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But it's so necessary.
It's so necessary. Listen, he brought me out. He rescued me from me on many days. Mm-hmm. And they're and they're right. You really have to step back and realize my mind is one of the things that I have to gain control over. So I daily shut down. Like, I am a journaler. There are some things that I need to get out, and I will write it down. There are some things that remain in that book. There are other things that I tear up and burn up because those thoughts were inside of me. Mm-hmm. They were really here. Mm-hmm. And I vow not to torture my husband with my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I never want to, like, I don't discuss the specifics of my marriage with anyone because I've learned two things. One thing that I want to do is get it off my chest. So if I get it off my chest and share it with my good girlfriends, I no longer need to have the conversation with him. And another thing is because love protects. Oftentimes, we uncover our husbands with our emotions, and I never want my husband to ever feel uncovered. So I have books and books of journals of some things that I just won't share with anybody. And it is such a release. And there's so much healing in writing. Like I'm working on releasing. I've been a co-author. I'm working on releasing my own literary work. But writing has been my escape and my healing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love writing too. I think that every woman should own journals.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Yes.
every season of her life. Exactly. I totally love that.
Mm.
So, in closing, what information, advice, girlfriend information you'd like to share to anybody who's watching?
The biggest thing that I would say is there's no such thing as perfection. We're not perfect. Our husbands aren't perfect. And oftentimes, they make choices and decisions that frustrate the very grace of who we are. And just finding that inner peace and realizing that our husbands are trying to do the best they can with what they know. And every decision isn't the best decision that we would do. It wouldn't be the way we do it. But give them grace to make mistakes, but give them grace to be the lead. And don't fault them for doing things the way that doing things differently from what we would do. It takes details to love, especially to love a pastor. You have to be detail oriented in your love. You have to have grace and capacity on your tolerance level, and you have to realize that I want to be in this marriage for forever. And in my forever, everything does not require a discussion. There are some things that I have to have the strength to deal with inside of me, and the capacity to release it to God after I talk to him about it. And it's important to me that my household is always a household of peace. It's always a household that my husband, my kids, my grandkids look forward to coming to. So what does it take within me to cultivate an environment of peace? And oftentimes I have to find peace in the quiet power of me. Mm-hmm. And me and God we've had many conversations. And there are often times when he would talk to me about this and he won't talk to me about this. And I'm like, God, I'm crying. Do you see my tears? Do you hear my words? And if God is not addressing it, then he's already equipped me to handle the moment. So I've learned that through difficulties. And I learned this also. God has already prepared my replacement. Don't give him a reason to activate it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. 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 Just so many more questions I would like to ask. Maybe we can do this again another time.
Listen, I would love to. I would be honored to do it. I'm grateful for your platform. While I know everybody's story is not mine, I do own my story. I own it loudly. I don't have any problem with living out loud. I believe that my mistakes are somebody else's answers. And I know that there are some wives that don't feel that way, but your platform gives wives an opportunity to share, to grow, to listen. And I thank you for your yes.
Yes, ma'am. You are very welcome. We do appreciate you stopping by to visit today. And again, thank you for sharing your information. You have helped us more than you will ever know. And this video will play all over the world and hopefully for years to come. And so there'll be seeds that'll be planted and later can bloom and give people the answers that they need so that they can say yes to whatever they have to. So thank you again.
Amen. Thank you.
Ma'am. Okay. Well, that's it for this edition of About Her Ministry. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and catch you next time. And be sure to remember to release your genius, pull off the impossible every day, and let's be glamorous, godly girls.
Yes, I love it.